Hello everyone. Yes, back in 2023, I decided that I had too many games in my backlog, and how would I go about just chipping them away, seeing what I like, seeing what I don't like, see if there's stuff worth keeping in the collection, that kind of thing. So I came up at the beginning of 2023 that I would do a month of playing games that were new to me. When I say new to me, I mean not brand new. I'm not going out and spending stupid money on games. They're ones that have been in the pile, in the mess behind me. Well, probably should have tidied this game room. But never mind. Games that were new to me I'd never played before, and I was going to give a new one a go every day for a couple of hours. I hope it was always do at least 2 hours, but sometimes they were a bit shorter. And just see what I thought of them, and make a series of YouTube videos explaining what I thought of what I played, to see if I should go back to them in the future or not. All of these games I decided to stream over on Twitch. One, because it'd be an easy place for me to get the footage and quickly back it up to YouTube without taking up loads of space on my hard drive, basically. And two, I thought if I streamed them, it would make me actually sit there and play it for a period of time. If I was just choosing the game and not having people interact or anything, I probably would put games on for 5 minutes and turn them off, which I found was a good thing during this. Well, last year it was a good thing. This year, yeah, also not too bad. I definitely would have wrote a few things off if I hadn't given them the time of day, which would have been a shame. Anything that I played which would, say, be like a shooter, which would be like a 30-minute playthrough, I didn't just do a 30-minute playthrough and then left it at that. I made sure that I had to either play it through with different characters or go for a couple of achievements or something, just so each game had pretty much a fair amount of time. I also decided to make sure that every game wasn't already set out in the month. I'd have a couple that I'd be interested to play, but other than that, I'd walk into it, I'd scan the shelves, I'd look for something which I thought, like as if you were scanning like a game rental store, or like back in the day, you went to Blockbuster, you wanted to pick something up and rent it, you would have to look and go by the cover and go by what looked interesting to you. So I decided to pick my games that way. I said there was a couple I wanted to play, because I hadn't ever got round to them, but yeah, mostly they were just random stuff that appealed to me that day. So as you can tell by this video, I decided to do it again this year. I may have alluded to that, what I said earlier. Never mind, I'm not a professional YouTuber, am I? I was naive when I started this challenge last year. I thought that what would happen is I'd easily find games to play. I didn't really, because I've ran into problems with things like stuff that I needed to install. Hence why this year there's a couple that I have pre-installed to play, and yeah, my internet's just awful, so I can't install stuff that quick. Some games I have to leave going for days if they've got large patches and things. So yeah, it is what it is, hence the couple that I've just randomly chosen. This year, naive again, I thought I bought a lot of games, I'll be able to find stuff easy. No, I've played a lot of this stuff, genuinely a lot of it, and it surprises me and actually makes me feel good about it. It makes me feel like I'm not just buying stuff to chuck them on the shelf for no reason. So anyway, that's enough of my waffling. Should we just see what I played for the first 10 games, first 10 days of the month of January 2024? Here they are. This year I once again joined the YouTube Secret Santa that was organised by James over at Gamezone Birdroom and his partner in crime, Paul, the Ink Northerner. I mention this as from my Secret Santa I received the final piece of my streaming setup, a pair of cat ear headphones. From that point onward, I promised I would wear the cat ears whenever I was doing a stream for a laugh, so this will explain why you will see me wearing a pair of cat ears during the stream footage. No, I haven't joined the furry community, okay? Anyway, to go along with these cat ears, I was also sent a copy of Evil West on the Xbox Series X. It's a game that looks right up my street, but I've never got around to playing it, so it seems only fitting for this to be the first game that I streamed this year. Going into the game, I knew it was a third-person shooter with a horror/Wild West theme, but that's where my knowledge ended. It turns out it reminded me of the slower movement of games like Gungrave, but with the kind of aesthetic of The Order 1886. Actually, the whole presentation gave me vibes of The Order, but this time it's vampires, not werewolves. I don't know if it's just the old-time setting, but I couldn't shake that comparison, even though they're set in completely different parts of the world. Although it is a third-person shooter, it's not just all gunplay though. You can perform melee attacks in the forms of punching and kicking, with the latter being used to interrupt any upcoming unblockable attacks. If you don't stop these attacks quick enough, all isn't lost. You also have a dodge move that looks like something out of a FromSoft game, but luckily this game doesn't have a stamina meter. You might not see much successful dodging from me in the footage, as I had spent the day earlier playing the Chant, and the dodge button in that was completely different, so my brain was struggling to adapt. Enemies can also be juggled up into the air and launched into stage hazards, such as large spike piles. I found this incredibly satisfying, and it took me back to the days of playing Bulletstorm on the 360, impaling enemies around the stage. The game does come off as being rather linear from what I've played, and it has the usual skill tree progression that we're used to seeing all so commonly in games these days. But I had a great time with it. It's a game that's not afraid to be what it wants to be, which is just dumb fun. It's the kind of game you can put on in small bursts if you're in the mood for some mindless violence. This is one I'm really looking forward to going back to and finishing off this year, especially as I had to cut the stream much shorter than I was expecting, as something important popped up. Oh, the Gry Hill incident. Where do I begin? This one came into my possession not long after playing the fantastic Madison on PS4. It was a game published by Perp Games, so when I saw the logo on the front of the case for Gry Hill, I hoped it would have been of similar quality. I had no reason to believe otherwise though, as the other Perp published games I've played in the past have been great. These include Moss for the PSVR, Lake, and as mentioned the amazing Madison, which was up there as one of the best games I played last year, also one of the scariest, not to mention the others I've heard good things about like Schnobolite and Synth Rider. So I just hoped that an old B-movie style alien invasion, abduction horror themed game would be an amazing campy time. Sadly though, before giving this a go, I kept seeing it pop up on people's worst games of 2023 lists over and over, but I steered clear of most of this information and just wanted to give it a go for myself. Warnings should have been heeded. The game starts off with what feels like a never-ending intro sequence with some voiceover and random environmental shots. I can barely remember what was being said, as it just wasn't entertaining enough to listen to. After this, you're just dropped into your bedroom and not really told what to do. This is a main theme of the game. It does start to give you tasks, but they're only available from the pause menu, and they aren't much help. The game wants you to feel like it's an open world, but it's super linear. If you try stray from the path, you'll be hit by invisible walls, fences, or the good old, I think you should turn back. But somehow, even though you don't have far to explore, working out where you should go is a nightmare. The game is super dark and everything looks the same. Not to mention you get caught on every small bit of scenery available. Usually it'll be something like a small hole in a fence or something that you need to locate to progress, but it never feels like it's done in a logical way. There are gates everywhere that have a prompt to open them, which is strange as they don't open. The only one that actually opens with the prompt is the first one you encounter. Other doors and things have no indication on them. It's just hit or miss whether things open. Sadly, when something does finally happen, and you start to encounter the enemies, you're forced to stealth around at a snail's pace from the least scary foes you will ever encounter. When the aliens spot you, they just walk at you relentlessly. They kind of look like short, malnourished Steve Jobs in their little black turtlenecks. As you can hopefully guess from that description, yes, they're the classic grey aliens, which could have worked so well, but they just amble about in the dark doing nothing but searching the floor with a ray gun. When they finally catch up to you, all that happens is the game cuts out and a nice bit of text pops up saying you were abducted and to try again. That's it. You can fight back with a baseball bat, but it's next to impossible to get it to connect with anything, as the hit detection is all over the place, and it takes what feels like a year to allow you to swing the thing for a second time. They take a beating too before they fall down, and sadly this doesn't even kill them. They just get back up and continue their casual mince towards you. You can hide from them in dustbins, cupboards and toilets, but peering out of the small gaps it gives you, you can't tell if they've moved on or not, so you don't know if the coast is clear. You just have to pray they're gone before emerging, and you just hope another slow-paced chase doesn't begin. I can't tell you much about the story, as it didn't seem to have much of one. It made me walk around in the dark picking up 5 rolls of tinfoil, spread around what seemed completely randomly, without checkpoints, avoiding the little anemic fuckers. After that I knew the game wasn't for me. Saying this though, I will go and finish it off, because it seems to be a pretty easy platinum trophy, but it's going to take a lot of willpower and a decent amount of beer to accomplish. I don't know who this game was made for. All I can say is nothing good can come from booting this up. Please avoid it. Please heed this warning. The Pathless is a game I was really looking forward to. It's created by the company Giant Squid, which was founded by the art director of that game company, who were the studio behind great games like Journey and Flower on the PS3. Though under this iteration this is only their second game. The first was the brilliant Abzu, which played quite a lot like an underwater journey to me. This kind of relaxing exploration game is something I really enjoy. I enjoyed Abzu enough to complete it both on Xbox One and PS4 in the past, but those other games don't really rely on any combat. It's more just movement around the world and the environments to explore. The main gimmick of the Pathless is to give you a bow and arrow. It is, however, used more to shoot points around the world to power up your speed and agility. This is so you can create smooth, speedy ways to traverse the world. The more of these targets you hit, the faster you can run, the higher you can jump, and you can even use them to move through the air. Breaking the combo will return the flow of movement just back to its normal base movement speed, and you'll have to work on building it up again. The world itself is large and barren, but feels once lived in, and the different levels of verticality make it a joy to explore, either as fast as possible or just stopping to look around. Throughout the world you'll find collectibles that can be used to permanently upgrade your character to make movement much easier. This comes in the form of things like being able to add an extra flap while gliding with your bird companion. There are also puzzles to be solved to be able to progress the story. So far from what I've encountered, they usually involve having to shoot an arrow through multiple targets in a straight line. Quite often you have to move the targets in place to line up these shots. Unlike the other games created by the same people, this does include combat, but it's in the form of boss fights. So far from what I've played, it just involved your speed skills being chained together so you could catch up to the beast running away from you, so you were able to then shoot its weak points on its body. When this was done enough times, it ended in a more traditional boss arena. Here I just had to dodge the attacks, then shoot some more weak points. I'm actually excited to see how creative they could get with the other fights, as it's a nice welcome to break up the relaxing exploration from the rest of the game. This is one I would recommend people give a go, and it's usually pretty cheap nowadays. Sadly, due to the style of game, there isn't much more I can say about it, but it is definitely worth your time. Day 4 was Arcade Paradise, a game where you're tasked to take over your father's old laundromat business, but you soon start to realise that the few arcade cabinets at the back of the place are bringing in more money than the laborious acts of washing the clothing and cleaning up after customers ever did. This gives you the idea to slowly work on investing the money and turning the place into a full-fledged arcade. You make money from running your family business and what you pull from the people bored playing the machines to slowly purchase new arcade cabinets to extend the size of the property and get your dream off the ground. The game starts off slow, as not much money is coming in doing the laundry over and over, and it starts to grate on you. But this is done purposely to spur you on to get working on that arcade dream. As far as I've played, your father is against the idea, but he doesn't have a say in it. We're doing this without his permission, and hopefully the money coming in will change his mind. You get communications from him through the PC that is located in your office, but this is also where you go to order new machines, and from what I remember you also make changes to the building here. The best part of the game is that all the machines you buy, you can also play. These are just knockoff versions of real games, but they're all pretty fun. But you need to remember, while you're playing, you still have a job to do, so time is money. This means the time still ticks away while you're playing these games. The game also has some strategic elements, like the placement of machines can make them more or less inviting, but I only played the game for 2 hours, and I didn't get that in depth with it. As you can tell, being a simulation game, it just takes a lot of time to get anywhere. This is most definitely a game I recommend if you're looking for something different and easy to relax and unwind with. Unlike most simulation games, it goes at your own pace and nothing feels like you're being rushed along. As for achievements, I don't know if it's going to be a difficult completion or not. It does look like it would depend on your skills in arcade games, as a lot of them seem to be tied to doing well on the individual cabs. After the month is over, this is going to be one of the first that I go back to playing. I did play this on Game Pass, but there is a physical available for the Switch, PS4 and PS5. Again, there isn't much I can say about this. The style of game lends itself to be played over a long period of time, and I didn't have that in the day I was playing it, but I did enjoy every second of it. Scrolling shooters or shmups, if you prefer, are one of my favourite genres to play, but their history is so vast I've only just scratched the surface with what I've played before, so I thought I'd knock one off from a classic franchise that I've never given any love to. Not that I haven't wanted to, it's more just that the games cost a small fortune on everything they've ever been released on. So what is this series? Of course, it's the Cotton games. They come under the genre of cute 'em up. Here you play as a witch on a broom rather than your usual spaceship or plane. More notably, I played the Cotton Reboot on PS4. From what I'm aware of, this is a reimagining of Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams. The game has been rearranged and given a massive overhaul in the graphics department. Not only does this game include the new game, it also has a faithful recreation of the Sharp X68000 version. This is also available from the get-go, so it gives you time to sink your teeth into more of a classic game. After all that though, how does it play? Like a shmup, of course. It slowly scrolls from left to right, and you shoot everything. But you already knew that, didn't you? To be honest, it controls super smooth, and your hitbox is just the centre of the character, so you don't have to worry about the full size of Cotton herself. This means you can pull off some rather impressive looking dodging skills, when the screen fills itself full of death dots of course, and trust me, it does get a bit hectic at times. But this isn't a problem. For casual players, you can power through the game with multiple continues with ease, the only penalty being that your score resets for the leaderboard when you continue. Due to how much was on screen at once, I did sometimes have trouble keeping up. I think this was due more to the backgrounds being so busy that the bullets would blend in, as I didn't have these issues at all playing the X68000 version. The replayability comes from having multiple characters to play through as, each of them feeling very different, and trying to beat your score of course. Also with the PS4 version, there's the inclusion of trophies, which to be honest, for a shmup don't seem that bad. The hardest one looks like it's just surviving the first 3 stages with no damage, but with a bit of practice this should be manageable. I played through the whole game a few times with multiple characters, and both versions in the couple of hours I was playing, and I never got bored. I'm hoping to be able to go back and 100% the completion on this at some point in the year. Hopefully I'm not overestimating my skills. I'm not the best shmup player. This is currently really cheap to buy. I think it cost me about £15. At that price point it's worth a go. But from playing this, I don't know if I'll ever drop the big money on the versions available on other systems. This one was all the fault of James, Retro Import Gamer. He popped a picture on his Instagram saying that he'd found a random game in CEX and was surprised to find it played like a PS4 version of Pilotwings. This got me interested, not just because it was a game I hadn't seen before, but growing up I was addicted to Pilotwings on the N64, so I jumped onto the CEX app and grabbed this for a whopping £8. Even though this was a newer game coming into the collection, I had to give it a go, and he wasn't wrong. It gave me serious Pilotwings vibes. When you boot the game up, you're not greeted to any story or introduction. There's just a single player or multiplayer option. I didn't try out the multiplayer, but the single player is a no-nonsense set of challenges to select and play. These challenges come in the form of plane, jetpack, hang glider or freefall sections. From there, the whole game is a set of timed challenges where you fly through rings or collect items. Luckily the game controls pretty well, although getting my mind back into the inverted plane system again took a bit of getting used to. Don't get me started on people who play first person shooters inverted. That's just wrong. The plane stages are definitely the standout, as there's no factors to worry about other than your skill of flying. You also do have to collect gems which will lower your time, as well as go through rings, but that's not too difficult. Second is the jetpack levels, but you have to be aware of your fuel, which depletes way faster than I was expecting. Lastly, the hang glider sections are fun, but they move incredibly slowly, and you have to require on upgusts of wind to gain height. If you miss one of these, you're pretty much done for on a run, and you might as well just restart. The freefall sections are rather few and far between, but when they pop up, they're a welcome change. You have to dive through rings and avoid obstacles before pulling out your parachute and landing on a target. In the time I played, I only did a handful of these, so if this is what you want from the game, it might not be for you. The game definitely has a very budget feel to it. It has the look of an upscaled Wii shovelware title, but I did have a bit of fun with it after I got used to it. A completion on this though might be a bit on the harder side, as some of the gold times seem impossible to me, but I guess with a lot of practice I could do it. But then again, from a game like this, do I want to dedicate that much time? Who am I lying to? You know I'm going to give it one hell of a go. Need them sweet trophies. Try this if you're after an arcadey Pilotwings experience, and don't mind it to be a tad on the budget side. Overall, it's not a bad game, but it's nothing to write home about. I wouldn't put it on your radar to seek out anytime soon. Being a fan of the Evil Dead franchise, I've always wanted to jump in and start giving the Evil Dead games a go. I've had all of them for quite a time now, but decided to jump in on the first one released on the PS2, A Fistful of Boomstick. I knew it was more of an action game than a horror game, but that was about where my knowledge ended. Jumping into the game, you're greeted with an on-brand intro, complete with cheesy dialogue. Shortly after that, you're dropped into the first level of the game. Each level is a mini open-world sandbox with unlimited respawning enemies. This was my first hurdle in the game. You're armed with a shotgun, with not much ammo, and you have to quickly find a melee weapon. I found I wasn't wanting to use the shotgun for most of the level, as I thought finding ammo was a bit of a ball ache, and whatever ammo I did find I thought I needed to keep for something big that was inevitably going to come up down the line. Due to this I was constantly losing health, as fighting off the hordes of enemies was just slowly grinding me down. Frustration was added as the game doesn't use any checkpoints or anything like a modern save system. You have to find save game tokens and save wherever you think it's a good idea to. You get a couple more of these than you expect, but you can easily run out if you're like me and a bit of a saving whore. On top of the waves of enemies, you're given a set of tasks and no direction on where to go or how to complete them, so being able to stay alive and explore is made much more difficult. You spend your time speaking to different NPCs, and in doing this it just seems to make your list of objectives longer and longer. I ended up running around blindly until I just fluked my way through parts of the stage. Eventually I found the chainsaw, which helped chop through the waves of enemies, but I got stumped on how to clear out a lot at the back of a strip club. No matter what I did, I couldn't find a way in. Up until this point, any items I've had to use in the game were from the inventory, so I couldn't find any keys or anything to get inside. This is where I broke and resorted to looking up what to do. You have to use one of your weapons to progress, so it turns out throwing dynamite over what seems like a random part in the fence would help you progress. In hindsight, there was a warning about explosives on the fence, but I would have thought it would have called for an inventory item, not just a random weapon. I'd completely forgotten about the dynamite as well, because I thought I'd stash it away and use it in case there was a boss or something. It does make me wonder, if I had used up all the dynamite, would I have been no longer able to progress? Also, I wasn't looking out for random signs, because the whole place is covered in them, and it's usually just some random babble about strippers. Quickly, on a side note, the inventory system for this is surprisingly similar to the Silent Hill games, and even seems to use very similar noises. Just threw me, that's all. Thought I'd mention it. So that was the first problem solved. Next, I couldn't work out how to get into a TV station. I had the key, but not the strength. This is where looking up the solution on the internet came in handy again. Turns out I was able to use spells from the Necronomicon book, so after using one to get stronger, I was in and the level was over. I was starting to think this game was awful, but it could have been made so much better with some tutorials. Starting the next level was more of the same, but this time I had to hunt down silver to close portals to stop enemies from spawning. Knowing more about how the game worked, I didn't have too much trouble locating things I needed to progress, but the sheer volume of enemies was still getting to me. Again, this is where a tutorial really would have helped. I was messing around with the controls and learned there was a block button. This helped a little, but you still get swarmed from all angles, which means you can only block from the front. You might be thinking, why didn't I try to figure out the controls at the beginning? I did, but a lot of them needed enemies in sight, otherwise Ash just stood there like a lemon. Finally, when I was close to death, I realised there was a lock-on button too. After finding this out, I was flying through the hordes of undead and having a blast. If only I'd worked all this out from the beginning. Or I could have just gone old school and read the manual, I guess. I also had loads of ammo saved up, so shooting everything was awesome. Now it felt like a totally different game. Rather than having to run in and retreat all the time, I felt like a badass. Just how you should in an Evil Dead game. This is where playing games for a set time on stream really helps me. I would have wrote this off after 5 minutes of play usually, but I forced my way through and ended up really enjoying this game. I would actually recommend it, but please read the controls first and don't feel disheartened to look anything up when you're stuck, and you should have a good time. Back in the day, the challenges I faced with this game would have seemed minuscule, but I was looking at it with modern sensibilities. I'm so used to action games telling me everything, every second, that I forgot to stop and look outside of the box for a minute, and almost wrote off this fun little game as a frustrating mess. If you played this before and have had a similar experience, I recommend giving it another go. Day 8 was another PlayStation 2 game. Spoiler alert, there's a lot of games on this system and the PlayStation 1 that I've never gotten around to, so you're going to see quite a few this month. The game in question is Dog's Life, a weird looking little game that screams budget release from the title and the box art. It's always looked like one of those cats or dogs games you used to get on the PC, and now have just become shovelware on everything they can these days. That's cats and dogs with a Z, or a Z, but shockingly, this is actually a little adventure game published by Sony themselves. Well, it was in Europe, but it was released here first, so we can call it a Sony published game. The aim of the game is to track down some dog nappers who've stolen your love interest. You do this through chatting with townsfolk, completing minigames, and using your nose to sniff out different coloured collectibles. The game is played from your standard third-person perspective, but will shift to a first-person view when sniffing out clues. Looking for these clues kind of reminds me of looking for the figments from the game Psychonauts, a game that if you haven't played it, why not, it's brilliant. Anyway, movement around this game is pretty fluid, but the jumping can be a bit on the ropey side. Everything is set in an open world, with each area being broken up by a loading screen, but you're free to come and go as you please. Each section has a set number of smells to find, mini-games to complete, and bones to collect. Bones are this game's main collectible, think stars in Mario 64. In the almost 2 hours I played of the game, I didn't work out how they were needed to progress, but I know you need them somewhere. The game did remind me of something I'd played before, but for the whole stream I couldn't put my finger on it, and sadly I still can't now. I did have a bit of a laugh with how absurd this game was, but it's not one I'm going to be racing back to finish. It was a pretty relaxed experience without much threat of danger, but I will say if you find it for a couple of pounds, it's worth picking up, if only to add something a bit on the weirder side to your collection. There's much worse out there on the PS2, and this isn't as shovelware as it looks. I have since learned that apparently it's got a rather dark ending, so I might have to go back to it. Sticking with the same console again, I wanted to play a game that's quite often lumped in with the horror set on the PS2, but it's more of a survival game. Up next is SOS The Final Escape, also known as Disaster Report in NTSC regions. It's got a different name in Japan, but I can't remember it and probably can't pronounce it, so we'll stick with those two. You are tasked with surviving and escaping an artificial island that's been hit by an earthquake. Along the way you will find other survivors who will help or hinder you. I can see why it gets dropped into the horror genre, as it has a similar playstyle, from finding and using items to reading information left by people who have already escaped. The game is actually made quite eerie by the fact that it's pretty quiet everywhere, and the silence is only broken up by things falling or another tremor. I did reach a subplot which seems to involve a murder or two, but I don't know where that's going to go. It could turn out to be a major plot point, and again why it gets dropped in with the horror games. There isn't much more I can add about the story or the gameplay without spoiling it, but it's most definitely an interesting title. Again, like most of these obscure PS2 games, it's got a very budget feel to it, but you can tell it was made with passion rather than just thrown onto a disc for some quick cash. A bit like Deadly Premonition. Now you can't say that wasn't a labour of love. This has actually spawned into a bit of a series. The last game coming out on the PS4, but now it also goes by the name Disaster Report here in PAL territories. I've been meaning to pick it up for a while, and it's actually the 4th game in the series. To make it even more confusing, we did see the 2nd game in PAL lands, but it's known as Raw Danger, and I'm not sure if it even got a UK release. I've seen copies from mainland Europe, but they cost a pretty penny now. Sadly, number 3 stayed as a Japanese exclusive and was released on the PSP. A quick fact about the game, the Japanese version is one of the few games that uses the res vibrator. Do with that information what you wish. If you find this one for cheap, give it a go. But I do think it may be a little bit too budget for a lot of people. With day 10 I was back on the hunt to try and find something that will fill the void that's been left in my life from finishing Power Simulator. So what did I go for? Of course it was Lawn Mowing Simulator. Yes, this game is exactly what it says it is. You're tasked with setting up your very own lawn mowing company, and to take on jobs and complete them as best and as efficiently as possible. With the more jobs you complete, the more people you can hire and better equipment you can buy. Keep repeating this until your grass cutting empire is complete. The gameplay loop is pretty simple. You use either your ride-on mower or your little strimmer to neatly complete jobs in a set time limit without running over other features of the garden, such as flower beds, as this will dock your pay. You will have to keep an eye on the fuel of your equipment and not to ride the mower too roughly, otherwise you will overload the motor and cause damage. Basically, just don't go too fast everywhere. This can be avoided by using an auto drive feature, where you just tap to speed up or slow down. This works great when covering large areas. All jobs have things like a desired grass length, so you have to set your blade height to the correct levels before cutting. I can already sense people turning the video off at this point. That's if you actually got this far anyway. Don't worry, I understand, and so did the stream of this game. It got fed up of me cutting grass and just ended itself prior to my knowledge. Never mind though, at least I was having fun. This really isn't one for everybody, and there isn't much I can say about it. But if you want something which is surprisingly addictive and surprisingly relaxing, I'd recommend it. Maybe not one for the completionist though, unless you want to do about 50 hours of simulated grass cutting. I also wish there was more stages where you just used the strimmer. That gave me the kind of power wash simulator vibe, just because you could see the progress easier. It also took me a while to realise there's a button you can press to see the grass you've missed. So I spent ages driving in circles trying to find stuff to start with, when all I had to do was tap a button and stay still. So much time wasted. And I don't mean that by just playing Lawnmower Simulator. Don't judge me. Drinking a beer this time, it makes it seem like time has passed, doesn't it? Cheers. Well, that's the first 10 days down of the month of January 2024 and what I played. Anything there you have played before, or anything that, from what I thought of them, would be a good recommendation to me, just let me know. So far, the standouts for me were Evil West, Cotton Reboot, and Arcade Paradise. I would say Lawn Mowing Simulator, but I think people might come after me. I'm tempted to keep either a tally of like the top 3 games I've played over this challenge, or at the end maybe rank them in order of how much fun I had, just to see how it goes. And after each one of these videos, we'll see if the top 3 has changed. It might just be a bit fun, that's all. Just a little bit of extra fun. And for the first time ever, I'm going to say, if you liked this video, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. I've put quite a lot of time into it, and I feel it's justified. Nah, I'm joking. I don't care. You don't have to. It's fine. But if you did enjoy this, part 2 will be coming some point in the near future, before 2025. Anyway, see you in part 2.